Hey, Magic fans, welcome back. This is your captain speaking here on Capnclydes MTG. Today, we found a little article about ex-Wizard employees from the layoffs, talking about what the layoff was like, with a little bit of an interview here on the Commander's Herald. So, done by John Nelson. Let's go over what he goes over and kind of get a look into what it was like to be laid off at Wizards, which is probably what everybody's going to have to expect after a while if they work there. But anyway, before we get started, don't forget, comment, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Comments down below are going to feed that YouTube algorithm. Help keeps us sponsor free. Unless you're ShamWow, you're welcome to advertise here. Um, links in the description to eBay Store, TCG Player. We have memberships up for free online content you get to see first before anybody else. If you remember, also we have live streams and chats that you'll get to participate in and nobody else will, and other sweet stuff. So, member up, help support the channel. If not, just a sweet subscription will do. And we're on Rumble. Check us out over there if that's your jam. So, let's get into it. So, what we have here is the exclusive interview with an ex-Wizards employee on the layoffs that happened. So, as we go down through here and we take a look at it, we talk about Hasbro's layoffs of the 1,100 people. We all know what's happening. We've talked about it a lot. As you can see, the parking lot after the layoffs. Yeah, okay, good times. Um, as we go through this, so there are some questions here. Let's go over what they think. So one of the questions during the interview was the layoff something that came out of nowhere? Yes and no. So while there were communications that numbers were not where they needed to be, which I just had a conversation in the chat with someone about how great the sales in Wizards of the Coast is. Not always. They might tell you it is. That doesn't mean it is. All conversations pointed to this being due to the toy division of Hasbro, and that changes would be taking place at the end. We had several town hall Q&As with HR, Cynthia Williams, and Mr. Cock, where they brought this up. In one, Cynthia responded to HR's comment of "We are killing it" by correcting her and saying, we actually were not. She then called out to someone in the back of the group saying, "I believe Wizards numbers are lower than last year," which I mentioned that during one of the comments in one of the previous videos, to which the person she was speaking to said they were actually up. She then tried to explain this as Wizards not hitting their numbers needed, i.e. what was promised to stockholders, and if not for Baldur's Gate 3, the company would be in trouble. When this was brought up in the Chris Cox town hall, he commented about it being more toward the toy division and that changes would have to be made. So a little bit on all sides here. I think it's what it pretty much boils down to. I think we're all pretty much aware of is they're not hitting the numbers that they used to. As you know, quick summary, they want to raise their sales number year over year. Well, eventually you can't do that because you will plateau and people just don't have money. The inflation is an issue along with other things in the market that people can't spend their money on toys and cards anymore. So this situation where you've propped your card game up and you've printed way too much product and now nobody wants it because they can't afford it, so it becomes very cheap, means that you've made a bunch of product that nobody will buy. So not only are you not hitting sales numbers, here's the thing. They can sell less products and make as much money. The key is to only make the product that will sell. Because if you make 1,000,000 items of something and 500,000 of them sell, you can still technically make money. But if the 500 million that don't sell, there's labor fees, production costs, overhead. There's all that kind of stuff that takes out of your profit. So you may still make a profit, but it will not be what you want to see. So they need to find that special place. And to do that, Wizard really needs to reset back down to where they were with low print runs and slowly eke it up until they hit that sweet spot without raising prices. Now, that's going to be the problem. Now, was there a severance package? If so, was it reasonable? There was a severance package, but looking at what's offered to other companies, it definitely was on a lower end. I'm going to be honest with you, most companies don't even give severances anymore. So they ought to be happy they even got that, especially when it comes to layoffs and mass firings. That's honestly something a lot of companies don't do anymore. And I'm speaking from experience, so they ought to be happy they got anything. But then again, it is Wizards, so if they did get something, they should expect it to be on the low side because they don't pay their people what they're supposed to in the first place. Anyway, next, Where are the internal fault lines, both at Wizards of the Coast and within Hasbro in general? So the employees within Wizards all meshed really well. You had to. Teams were so short-staffed and begging for headcount before the layoffs that you didn't have a chance to clash about anything. Well, everybody's short-staffed. That's just the thing these days. You have to make more with less. Um, the real issue here, I don't think it's the fact that they're short-staffed. It's the fact of proper project management and laying out proper goals and responsibilities in a manner that people can do them in a quality standpoint. Now, again, this is where Wizards is just trying to, get blood out of a rock by pushing everybody, past their limits. Then they end up with poor products, poor quality. Everybody gets pissed. Customers stop buying your stuff. And then they're like, well, we should just lay people off because clearly it's the people's fault, not the fact that we're pushing this fucked up agenda that people can't meet the deadlines on because it's honestly more work than humanly possible. I see it in companies all the time. And in several of the companies I've been into, the excuse is we have to make more. Well, guess what? Eventually you will lay people off or they will just quit. And then you'll hire 2 or 3 people to do the job of the one person that you had overloaded. And it'll be worse work than you got out of them because they're not experienced, yada, yada, yada. At the end of the day, this is just a good example of a company getting out of hand with how much work they hand out and how much they want to make. And it's a pure example of the greed monster. So, from your experiences, were the layoffs targeted at upper, middle, or lower class employees? So it says here across the board, the only exceptions were the execs who needed to be held accountable the most, as always. So the execs are going to come in and they're going to, play the dick measuring contest and tell you what they want done, and then when they fuck up your job and what you do and how you function, they won't be fired for it. You will because you're the manager of the area, or your department will because your department didn't perform. This is something that's never going to be fixable in corporate America because we're in this area where instead of holding people accountable that are actually in charge like executives, they hold people in the area. Because here's the thing, guys. From a production standpoint and a business standpoint, here's what should really happen. The exec should be the first one fired if their team doesn't perform underneath them. And here's why. The execs are like, well, they have managers and yada, yada, yada. The point to being an executive or a manager is to manage your team. So if you're an executive and your manager is not performing, you should fire your manager as soon as possible if you can't get him on board. And if the manager is like, well, it's my team, well, the manager needs to either get rid of the team and get new people who can perform, or he should be fired. It rolls downhill. And what normally happens is you get a really good team at the bottom who can perform. You get people promoted above them who don't understand and want to make themselves look good. So they ruin the whole dynamic, and then you end up firing a good team and keep a shitty exec, and then you wonder why the company goes down the shitter. So, long story short. Now, is your faith in Hasbro as a company any different now compared to a month ago? Faith is much, much lower, the guy said. However, this was dropping even before the layoffs happened. The constant need to squeeze customers for everything they could, we talked about that, while requiring employees to do more and more with fewer resources just showed that they were strictly about the money, i.e. the greed monster. And yes, companies have to make money, but there was a clear disregard for the customers here. Concerns and feedbacks are constantly raised to leadership, but it didn't matter, only to just keep pushing the product. Again, this is another great downfall to most companies that they never see coming. And if you do point it out to them, they just tell you you're wrong and then fire everybody underneath you, do layoffs like this. And then eventually the company collapses or doesn't become productive until they get fired. So we'll see how it plays out. But this is a problem in most businesses because, again, accountability. So how much exposure to the details of Wizards of the Coast branding items does the standard Hasbro employee have? Do you see or hear anything like book names, packaging before it's announced? Well, it depends on the products that you're working on or with. You have to have insight to build campaigns and marketing, but insight was all there was. Again, feedback, concerns, and anything else brought up were dismissed. So, again, they don't care what the customer wants. They're just going to push their agenda, which is why we should boycott some product releases and product pricing until we make them take a loss and they have to reprice it to get it to sell. That's the only way big companies learn, is by kicking them in their pocketbook. And hopefully they're holding that pocketbook between their legs. Anyway, all right, next we have what was the internal reception to the Alta Fox's attempt to separate from Wizards 2022. Uh, it was hard to hear anything about this so much. Becoming one with Hasbro is going to be wonderful, being shouted at us. However, employees were wary and had concerns. Nothing I recall being addressed, just a lot of leadership. We'll have to discuss that and get back to you. So again, uh, you know, they don't want to sow dissent in the ranks. Because if they separate, that means that that Hasbro's doing a bad job, and they don't want to admit that because admitting that again would be accountability, and therefore somebody would get to fix something. Heaven forbid that fucking happen. So yeah, what is the internal reception of the Magic the Gathering Arena? Wild cards, yada yada. Um, yes, players complain, but as long as they're spending money, why change anything? So I've said this on several, and actually all of my arena broadcasts and videos. Don't pay money for arena, because if you stop paying money, they'll start doing things and fixing it because money stops flowing into it. Arena is basically a pay-to-play game we know that because of how the game is ran. It's much like a mobile app where it's all pay to win, with microtransactions. Just guys, you have to stop. There's no reason to do it, and just stop. I mean, instead of a microtransaction, $5 to get a cool skin or some sleeves. I got a better idea. Take $5, go buy some ice cream or a sandwich. You'll get more out of it. And when you're done, you can throw that shit away. Get it? Poop. Shit. Anyway, moving on. What are some resources you know about that could help out those who have been laid off by Hasbro? Well, they talks about LinkedIn and yada, yada, yada. We all know about that. LinkedIn is a great source. If you guys ever need a job, I would definitely suggest jumping on there. And that's pretty much it. So for any of you who don't know, obviously this interviewer, or interviewee, was kept nameless to keep them out of trouble, and that's fine. I think these are all problems that we're well aware of at Wizards of the Coast, and it's going to take a real shock to the system to get anything to change, and that shock is going to be us buying less products and not spending high amounts of money on products that we know are expensive and way over cost. Inflation hits everybody, and I'm here to tell you, even I'm buying less Magic products because I don't want to fuel their greed because they have enough of it. So until next time, friends, be kind, and as always, I hope to see you across from the game table. Like the rat Talus ShamWow on Wizards of the Coast, just right between the pata.